Hi, I'm Karina Knudsen from Agency Success at Zeppelin, and I'm so excited to be hosting the inaugural Zeppelin Zam Jam. Hopefully, it's going to be the first of many to come. In this session, I'm going to be talking to three amazing thought leaders and influencers from the digital agency community about how Zeppelin helps agencies foster deep customer engagement and multidiscipline team collaboration to build beautiful products and deliver on the promise of design. In today's current climate, using tech to work together and cooperate more effectively, where everyone's working more remotely, has never been more important. And my guests are going to share their own personal experiences of using Zeppelin, including best practices, but also some learnings with some useful tips and practical hints as well. What's extra special is that they're going to be bringing this to life with their own kind of real customer examples. So please do stay tuned to hear more. Just before we start, though, I should probably tell you a little bit more about ZAM. So ZAM is Zeppelin's agency membership program, which was launched earlier this year to build a global community of the most innovative, talented, and creative agencies across the world that are using Zeppelin. And it's a way for us to give something back to our agency partners with a range of exclusive benefits, including things like technical intimacy and training, promotional opportunities and showcasing, and lots more. We have such a diverse mix of agencies in the Zam family, and if you're interested in joining us, please do visit our Zam agency portal and apply, as we'd love to hear from you. The link is in the description. It should only take a few minutes to complete, and then you'll hear from one of our agency success managers with next steps. But for now, please sit back and enjoy the discussion. Welcome everyone to the first Zam Jam. It is my pleasure and honor to be joined by three amazing thought leaders from amongst the digital agency community. I am so excited to be hosting this session today. I know we're not only going to have a really thought-provoking and interesting discussion, but we're also going to have a lot of fun too. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my tour de force and give a very warm welcome to my tour de force of guests today. What's extra awesome is that we are literally crossing continents and time zones because we're peppered all over the world. And that's very reflective of our global ZAM community. To jazz it up a bit, I'm going to ask each of my amazing guests to introduce themselves. We'll kind of go in order of the sun because that was the fairest way that I could think of running the introductions. I'd love it if you could each introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about your role and your agency, and perhaps you could tell us a fun fact or something interesting that not everybody would know. Please do keep it clean. So Ryan, we're going to start off with you. You're in New Zealand, so you're in our tomorrow, which is, I always find I can't get my head around. And I know you're not going to be shy of a fun fact because you've had such an amazing, epic, interesting kind of business journey over the years. So over to you.
I don't know about that, Karina. When you see the word clean, I think I need to change my mind now. Anyways, yep, so it's 7:30 in the morning here, the day after everyone else. So I'm Ryan Delaney. I'm the group CXO and co-founder for a company called Overdose. We established this business around 4.5 years ago, nearly 5 actually. We've grown our digital agency from 2 people, myself and Todd Welling, to about 270 people now. And that number changes on a monthly basis, to be honest, with the rapid growth that we're going under, especially with the evolution that digital is now sort of integrated in the sort of ecosystem today. So my role in the company is to essentially manage globally the experience of things. So that's everything to do with creative and UX and that sort of UX strategy. And there goes my watch. So we essentially have grown a business. We do end-to-end solutions for businesses. So really focusing on the e-commerce side of things, and really building partnerships with a lot of clients globally as well. So that's kind of what we do. In terms of a fun fact, I might make it a little bit different to, I guess, the creative world, but I learned the alphabet backwards just for some strange reason. After watching Cops in the US, I thought, maybe one day I'm going to have to watch. One day I'm going to have to learn that alphabet backwards. So I learned the alphabet backwards. Very bizarre, but I can do it.
Awesome. Thank. Right. If we've got time at the end, maybe you could give that a go. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. I would now like to introduce my second guest. So it's perhaps somebody that you may actually have heard of and be familiar with. He's known as a bit of a tech influencer, certainly in Europe. He hosts his own YouTube series called Tim Tries, where he often does unboxing and unveiling of new technologies and new tools. If you haven't watched it already, I would certainly recommend that you do. I've had some really sort of interesting insights and tips and some useful stuff come out of it. So do give it a watch if you haven't seen it before. And Tim, over to you.
Wow, that is some intro. I don't think I've ever been called an influencer. Does that mean that it's official now? Can I now stop? I don't know. Anyways, so my name is Tim and I am Dutch. So I am in Europe. So for me, it is 7:42. And so I come from a front-end developer perspective. I am the director of web development at an agency called Valtech. And Valtech is like a pretty big global agency where we are not super huge level, but just small enough to still be super agile, but also tackle huge clients. And huge clients come with design systems and creative approaches to a whole bunch of things. And that's why we use Zeppelin a lot. And I'm not sure if my fun fact is clean or not, because I actually am a trained nurse. And I did a whole bunch of not so clean things as a nurse. Um, However, the funny thing is, so I basically changed the whole spectrum from being a nurse now to being in tech. But I use that training on a daily basis, all the soft skills and stuff that come with that. Actually, I think that training now makes me successful. So that's kind of a crazy one, but there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, that is a serious career change there, right? So
Oh, yes,
thank you
certainly.
for sharing that with us, Tim. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to invite our third guest today. She's based over in the States. I've loved getting to know her over the last few months, and I'm constantly learning from her. She's a very strategic thinker. And actually, a little bit of a fun fact about us actually was when we were preparing for this call, we jumped on a briefing session a few weeks ago, and it became apparent that, you know, you've got a mutual connection with Tim. And when Tim asked your mutual connection, have you heard? Then actually it was said that actually, you're so amazing and that OMG, we're so lucky to be working with you, right? So you've clearly got your own global fan base. I am also part of that fan base. I love your work. We're so glad to have you with us, Isabel. Please tell us a little bit about your role and what you do as well.
Thank you so much, Karina. I don't know if I have a fan base, but I am definitely happy to be here with you all. And it's been great to get to know you for the past few weeks. I am the head of technology at Organic. I've been working in the technology space for over 15 years now. I started as a developer, a front-end engineer. I've been working on websites, apps, physical installations, everything that has to do with technology at an agency for these years. So right now I'm at Organic, which is a digital agency based in New York City. That's where I live. We also have offices in San Francisco, LA, and Detroit. Let's see, a fun fact about me. I don't know how much fun it is, but I used to play piano for many years growing up, and I really enjoyed it. Now my son is learning to play piano, so I get to help him with that. I always found it interesting that math and music are so related because I have a very mathematical mind. So I always thought that was probably why I also enjoyed playing a musical instrument. So there it is.
Very interesting. And actually, yeah, I never kind of thought about the correlation between maths and music, but you're right, it exists there. So that was certainly a really interesting fact. Thank you for sharing that, Isabel. Um, right, so let's kind of get into the gist of why we're here. I think it's an understatement, and it goes without saying that this year has been exceptionally challenging for many businesses and also for for agencies. And we've kind of all had to adapt to what's called now the new normal, and making a lot of changes. Ryan, let's start with you. Actually, I'd love to kind of get your view on how things have changed for you this year as an agency, and particularly from the lens of kind of how you're working with clients differently, and some of the ways that you're using tools to deliver for customers.
Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting year for a lot of agencies and businesses. I've got two spectrums to the way that to this question is. I've got it from the Overdose spectrum, and I've also got it from our client spectrum, right? Because for us as an agency, is that we've been very fortunate in the sense that everyone it moved from this very bricks and mortar space, right, where everyone was very primarily focused on this bricks and mortar, and digital happened to be somewhat quite a complementary aspect to their business, right? And then now it's become much more of this somewhat necessity where e-commerce and digital strategies became very much embedded in their business, and some of you saw it in the industry is that some businesses really had to change their entire business model where they relied heavily on that bricks and mortar experience and then didn't quite have that full digital end-to-end experience with customers. So that was quite intriguing to see that to some extent. Some of our clients, did extremely well, and one of the things that I think we do at Overdose is, and we built this company to actually be partners with our clients, right? We don't help them, we work with them is probably a better motive. So we spend a lot of time actually just working with a lot of clients and just giving them in terms of like, we need to be focusing on this now, we need to be focusing on that. We need to really connect with a lot of our clients where you start to see, one of our fashion clients actually had people on Zoom calls while they were the only person in the store. This was during complete lockdown, and they had people on Facebook Live and Instagram Live, etc., where they'd pull things off the rack and go, hey, do you want to buy this? And the entire experience was completely different, but it actually really helped build a lot of relationships with customers in a very unique way, which I loved. So I saw that kind of spectrum of it. With how we operate is, Todd and I, when we started the business, is that we always made sure that we had laptops, and we made sure that we always had that right sort of, hardware that we needed to ensure we didn't prepare it for a pandemic, of course, but we've always prepared it in the sense that people can work from home if they wanted to. So we didn't have to react as hard as a lot of other companies probably did, where they had to take their desktops home and do a bunch of, we had problems with the internet, all that kind of stuff. So we were somewhat fortunate in that. And I guess we've grown a global business where, I have to have Zoom calls with people in New York constantly. So that kind of remains somewhat the same. It's just the real challenge for us is that I used to also travel a lot. It's kind of weird not actually having now that real relationship with clients and actually kind of seeing each other face to face. And because you still can't beat that type of relationship, right? But I can tell you what, Zoom calls are far more efficient, and I don't have to sit at airports and be on 20-hour flights anymore, which is somewhat incredible, but I do also miss it now too, massively.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Absolutely, thank you. And Isabel, how about you? So, what's changed for you? Perhaps a bit different to to what Ryan's explained there. And how have you had to make adjustments in terms of how you're collaborating with your customers and how you're working across your team, and perhaps share some sort of stories around what tools you're using to drive that collaboration?
Yeah, there's some similarities there with what Ryan just said. We've had some of the kind of remote working processes have already been in place for me and for my team, because we've always had a distributed team, right? And especially engineers are used to collaborating with different locations around the world. We have a team in South America, for example. So it was great in that respect, because we were able to just hit the ground running. We have collaboration tools like, of course, Zeppelin is one of them. It's actually one of the key tools that we use for the tech team, but also for the collaboration between the creative team and the tech team. And of course, other tools like video and chat and audio calls, all of those have helped. But going back to Zeppelin, it has definitely been one of the key tools for us, not just in our internal collaboration, in the handoff between the creative team and the development team, but also in the collaboration with clients. And as Ryan said, we are not able to go there in person anymore, which used to be part of how we did things. And we've had to adapt. We still have to make sure that we are efficient in communicating ideas and delivering work to clients. So Zeppelin has had a key role there as well. And our clients have just loved learning to use it and have adopted it very quickly, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Tim, I'd love to kind of bring you into the discussion here, because I know you share some similar experiences and sentiments, and when it comes to kind of the impact that COVID's had. But a lot of your career has been working with the luxury fashion industry. They obviously have very high expectation on precision of execution and quality of work. And I know, again, you also kind of use Zeppelin as part of your tool stack. Maybe you could kind of give a scenario and some examples around how you're using Zeppelin within your agency and where you feel that Zeppelin has kind of helped you across your project work, with teams.
Well, what we see nowadays is we we kind of switch between doing full service, and then sometimes we are not completely full service, but because a lot of those luxury brands already have like an agency of choice. This is just how that sometimes works for storytelling or creative driven user journeys, things like that. And so now we are starting to focus so much more on, okay, so we still need to work together with all these agencies in these different markets, because sometimes per market it's actually a different agency. What is the tool to actually make sure this is kind of aligned? And the fact that we don't have to do the discussion on, okay, so you do Photoshop and then you send me an InDesign file and then you have to name the files correctly and all of that stuff, right? Or however your sketch thing works or your artboards. We actually eliminated that whole story or that complicated stuff by just syncing it in Zeppelin. So we kind of have to just teach the approach, do it in components, use reusable things. And suddenly when people get that and you actually see it work, when we actually connect it, not only in Zeppelin, but then also to the next bit, right? Which is maybe we can connect our user story that we have with our specs also into Zeppelin. We have bugs, we have code things, we have all these things together now, basically makes it the heart of the system. And the cool thing about it is that all these agencies just go there. I don't have to be on the phone anymore. We kind of just say, okay, just go there, done. And I have to be honest, it doesn't work everywhere because people tend to use what they love. And sometimes they haven't seen the new stuff yet. This is life. But where it did work, it's an excellent experience, and we really enjoy it. Does that
Awesome.
cover the
Thank you,
question?
Tim.
You are
It sure
unmuting.
does. Yeah. I suffered the first, schoolgirl failure of doing a recorded session. I was on mute. Apologies. Thank you very much, Tim. That was really
Sure.
insightful. Isabel, I know you and I have kind of talked about a particular customer scenario, which maybe you could kind of share as well, just kind of giving a real life example of where you're using Zeppelin and how it's kind of driving that collaborative power across your team.
Yeah, sure. So we've recently redesigned the website for National Instruments, one of our clients who are based in Austin, Texas. They're a technology company that creates testing tools. So this website was had a lot of legacy, a lot of tech debt, as we call it. There were tools and platforms under the hood that we needed to kind of collaborate with our clients on. And on top of that, of course, was the creative team doing the visual redesign. So we did find Zeppelin as one of the tools that we implemented there with our clients and internally to help work through this process. And I think Tim or Ryan, you mentioned design systems. So that's something that we started working with our clients, and we're continuing to work on with this client on creating a design system. And a tool like Zeppelin is so helpful in doing this and being able to create components and keep track of your components and items. Yeah,
And
it was.
so with them, Isabel, like, do you feel like, you know, I mean, one of our strap lines in Zeppelin is single source of truth. For you
Yeah.
with National Instruments, is that kind of where you use it as it is the single source of truth? It's where everybody goes to get, you know, the latest assets, everything that's signed off, the style guides and the brand guidelines and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Zeppelin is definitely the single source of truth for that, and that is where our clients go for it. Not only that, but I think I would add to that just the fact that you can, you know, these days you have designers that can code, and there are developers who have a design sensibility, right? So I feel like Zeppelin kind of is perfect for this environment because you can have these code snippets and you can have them connected to the design piece. That has made, again, our collaboration in this remote world so much easier.
Awesome, thank you. And Ryan, just, you know, from your perspective, I know, you know, your agency has created one of the first experiences for an online weight loss consultation in Australia, very well-known brand in that region. Maybe you could just share a bit about, you know, how you use Zeppelin across your very dispersed team, because you do have kind of offices all over the world too. And I know that it was quite a complex project, so it would just be really interesting if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, firstly, I want to completely agree with what Isabel was saying then as well. Like with the design components and, you know, like Overdose, we have our own design system that's very bespoke to what we do. It is 100% the only platform that can really cater to that. And if we don't have that, then it kind of breaks everything for us. But to your question about the weight loss client, that client is Jenny Craig. I can loud and proud say that. But in the APAC region, so in Australia, more of. So it was the first time that they've ever gone in Australia, ever gone digital, which is, it's quite an interesting sort of project, right? Where people go see consultations, they're sitting into, they go to the Jenny Craig sort of shop or whatever you call it, and they sit down, they discuss a lot of things with them. And we built this experience where, this online experience where we didn't do the CMS site, but we did the complete ordering system of it. Where the way I wanted to sign up to Jenny Craig was, it's almost like a chatbot, sort of you're talking to a consultation sort of system, where you kind of ask all these questions and it feels like you're actually talking to someone when you're signing up, not like a boring form and process. You know, there was a lot of complications in terms of UI and UX and animations, and Zeppelin was basically what everyone's saying is that source of truth, and the fact that we can actually document, we can actually properly have, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree with this, where you get designs to development and there's always something that gets sort of a little bit hairy in between. You know, you can really help mitigate a lot of that with the likes of Zeppelin by, you know, the likes of putting through components and style guides and documentation. And equally, yes, we've got developers all around the world, is that I've kind of got a bit of a different circumstance, the likes of Tim, where we're not using separate agencies, we're using our own agencies, but we've got people located everywhere. So, they can all essentially, have access to Zeppelin. They all know what they need to do in Zeppelin, and it's a single source of truth and actually execution. And I can hand on heart say it's the only tool that can like for like those designs that works the design system. Hand on heart say that.
That's
What I really
great
like about this
feedback. Thank you.
part is, sorry, what I actually love about this is what you explain, Ryan. Once you introduce Zeppelin into a system where they didn't really have it just yet, you can see how it clicks and everybody's like, oh, oh, that's how that works. There is actually something that exists, because we've seen that so many times where you are at least completely dispersed and you have so many people working on this document and that document and a wiki, and then if nothing connects, it's the hairy bits you just talked about. It's like everywhere,
Yeah.
and your end product can still be great, but the way there and the maintainability for the future, that makes that so hard, right? So we've seen when we then introduce this system that people are like, you see the light bulb moment, and that's really fun.
So true, Tim.
Awesome
Well,
feedback.
i'm
Thank you.
i'm bold for a reason, right? Right, luckily now I might not lose more. I have a hat on though.
And it's an awesome hat. Actually, out of interest, what is on your hat? Is it a hedgehog?
No, this is a corgi. This is a butt of a corgi.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I could talk about that for a while. I won't though.
Maybe that's for another Zam Jam, perhaps.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I mean, one of the other things I wanted to achieve with this session was getting some, alongside the thought leadership discussion, was just getting some really practical tips for people watching, because you know all of you are avid Zeppelin users, you know the tool. So I was really keen to kind of get some tips and tricks from you as well. I'm going to start off with Ryan. So if I had to ask you kind of what's your favorite feature in Zeppelin, what would you think is your favorite feature and why?
Um, I put this in two ways again. My favorite thing is that it's like for the design. It actually worked the design system. That is 100% my favorite feature. I've had too many pain points in the past with other tools, which I won't name. But
I know which ones you mean, probably.
yeah.
Anyway.
I think for us, our favorite tool is probably the pulling through the components and the style guides into its own sort of system. It keeps it super clean. It keeps it super tidy for essentially that type of documentation and for our team to actually work far more efficiently, right? For me, efficiency is everything. It's, it creates, a lot of speed, and it also helps save a lot of time. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. And Isabel, I guess from your perspective, you talk about using a lot of the collaboration features and integrations within Zeppelin. Are there any that you couldn't live without, or maybe some that you'd like to see us integrate with in the future?
There's one that I'm very excited about. I think it's fairly recent. So I just love the way code, again, I go back to the integration between code and design, and the fact that you can have live code in Zeppelin that pulls from your code repository is something that I just love. I think it's great, and it's the right direction for Zeppelin to go into. So very excited about that.
Awesome. Good. And Tim, how about for you? Sort of, one of the great benefits of being part of the ZAM community is the opportunity to influence our roadmap and our future. We've kind of had some exchanges on this, which I think are really interesting. I would just love to get your views as to, if Zeppelin was yours and you could kind of look at the next thing, what would you like to see that be? And that can be one thing, it can be a couple of things. The floor is yours.
Ooh, here we go. If Zeppelin was mine.
If
Now, so
Zeppelin was
I
yours.
think, like as I thought about this before a little, I think it's two part. It's quite close to what Isabel is actually saying. The code bit is starting to become pretty solid, right? So you can connect the CLI to your code and you can see what properties you use, stuff like that. But why not take that one further and probably fail for a while until it gets there? Is why not integrate whatever component you have there that maybe when you click output or export, you can do an SVG, right? You can do icon stuff like that. Why not also export a rudimentary React component, right? And maybe connect that to your Git repository to see, okay, if it's, I don't know how to say this yet because you don't know how good it can be because every component is probably going to be different, right? But it could be a cool step that when you go from Zeppelin to code and you update that code, you give that back to Zeppelin, that at one point your code base becomes leading rather than your creative work, right? So you can sync both ways. And maybe we can even sync whatever code we just did back into the design files, right? So you can kind of bridge it. This is like blue sky vision. I don't think it will happen anytime soon because everything you build is different every time. But that would be fun. Another
I
one,
would like to see that. Definitely.
right? Exactly.
Right. So
Yeah,
Isabel's
I
seconding that.
second.
Ryan, what do you think? Are you thirding that motion?
100%. I was that first guy that didn't push unmute.
There we go. No, but
Awesome.
it's
Tim, your
really is
your
an.
second idea.
There we go. The one thing that we see all the time, and this is an actual thing that happens most projects because our projects are big platforms, right? So we don't have 100 users. No, we have 1 million users. And if you have to make a list of stuff with creative approach, right? Maybe a search result or whatever, data is never consistent for us. And migrating data from an old platform to the new is actually a project on its own. What I would love to see is if you can plug in some sort of data feeds or APIs or whatever into Zeppelin. So Zeppelin could already show you with the symbols that you have and the little components that you have, how does it look with data that's basically broken or missing or too long or a weird image ratio or whatever you throw at it. I would love to see that Zeppelin can be slightly more dynamic, right? You can say, render me a grid with this data. And I know you can do this in Sketch. There's some plugins, but it's not really easy. And so also Zeppelin is the heart, right? So if everybody looks at the Zeppelin bit rather than at the sketch files, I would love to just give real data. Like what happens if you just update your website and that is already reflected in Zeppelin on certain bits, right? That would be huge for us. Because the funny thing is, we always have to tell the creative people, and I'm one of them sometimes, like, please give me a component in every state, which means the title is in German, or the title is not there, or the image is crazy, or it's slow to load, but one part is there, the other is not. How does that work? Because that's my daily life, right? Performance, accessibility, all of those things. So if we can have some sort of representation of that in our creative system or design system, you would probably reduce 30% of my time, which can then be spent on better design or better storytelling or making more money consulting, whatever, right? Anything goes. So those are my wishes. And I don't think they're very easy, but we can definitely make a start, I think.
Wow, interesting. Isabel, Ryan, any thoughts, feedback on Tim's wish list there?
I support it fully. I think that would be great.
Isabel, we come from a relatively similar job. So I guess we've both felt like the whip cracked the stuff that didn't work, right? So there you go.
Yeah, agree. And seeing an integration with data sources and that update on the fly, yeah, that would be such a huge help. So yeah, we live in very similar worlds.
Exactly. I'll speak for our developers, and I'll say 100% agree with him as well.
Okay.
There we go. Roadmap created.
I think the one I probably 100% agree on with Tim knows reacting components. Like a tool that we particularly are using at the moment is a tool called Framer, which is very much to do pretty advanced interactions and animations and stuff like that. So it'd be fantastic if we can actually integrate a lot of that stuff that we're doing into Framer into Zeppelin as well. So then we can essentially create true masterpieces and essentially give as much data to our devs as possible, right? And be as accurate as possible.
This was one of my questions to both of you, actually also to you, Karina, that like we do a lot of creation of animations also, right? But we also show prototypes and things like that. And I know it's not completely in the scope of Zeppelin because you're not your competition that maybe does more but not as well or whatever, right? How do you guys deal with like, okay, I have to present animation now, where do you store it? How does that work for you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when Ryan mentioned Framer, because we do use that tool for prototypes. It would be great to see how there can be a solution for prototyping in Zeppelin as well. I would love to see that. I don't know yet what it would look like, but I think that's an interesting question. We also use, well, we use many tools for prototyping. Another one is Principal
Oh yeah,
as well
sure.
that we
Yeah.
use. Yeah, yeah. And we've been looking at Lottie for doing animations recently, actually, for some internal projects. It's been having its challenges, but it's an interesting one to look at.
We're doing the same thing. So we're working for a theme park and it needs a lot of Lottie to do a lot of those animations. So I'm on the exact same page as you there.
Yeah, so I guess looking at how Zeppelin could do this, I wonder if adding a whole bunch of stuff of extra features into the same application is the right way to go. Because if you look at now how our digital experience is going, we're starting to go away from the best of suite approach with one tool that has everything. We're starting to go more best of breed, which is Zeppelin is clearly one of those, right? It's more scoped, but it's fantastic in that scope. So why not have something else and then connect it? I think that might be where the crux is. I don't know how to do that yet with Zeppelin, but that might be an interesting one.
Wow, super interesting. I mean, my mind is blowing up as you're all talking about it for sure. I mean, just going back to kind of Zeppelin and use and tips and tricks. If you were talking to an agency that perhaps wasn't using Zeppelin or was still in their infancy, what would you kind of recommend as being key things that they should be thinking of as part of their, tooling process and workflow and strategy? Anybody, any takers on that question?
I could, if you want.
Go for it, Tim.
I would definitely focus on the governance part. Might sound a little bit boring, right? But you know what? Once you have good governance and everything like that is out of the way, you have time for creative work.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy because people who are extremely creative want to just jump in and do iterations and stuff, right? That's what you should be doing. But if you just tackle the governance thing where actually write some specs, right? Actually write a technical user story, actually have a persona that says, hey, this person is going to probably do something, blah, blah, blah. And then connect that through Zeppelin, right? With the Zeppelin CLI, you can connect things to your code, but you can also add links to each component. And that's what we tend to do, where we just say, okay, we live in something like that's called Confluence, which is like a wiki kind of tool, where we basically create all our user journeys, right? And then those user journeys, once a developer starts or a QA person starts or a creative person starts, that user journey is theirs. They're responsible for that part. Wouldn't it be nice if that actually is always in their face when they look at the tools that they use, right? Just get rid of the complications of not doing governance, and then suddenly you have freedom and time. So even if you're small, focus a bit on it and then run from there. But of course, I'm saying this coming from a background of a long time working with big agencies, right? So maybe it's not the best for every startup, but the moment you hit a certain critical mass, you're just going to have to do this. So that's my take on it.
Wow. Very insightful, Tim. Thank you. And on that golden nugget, I think we're going to call it a wrap. It leaves it for me on behalf of Zeppelin to thank you all so very much for your contribution. It's been such an insightful discussion. I'm sure everybody that's watching has had some great takeaways from our chat today. And remember, for anybody watching, if you want to join the Zam family and maybe get your chance at taking part in a Zam Jam in the future, please follow the link in the description. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and stay safe.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.